Welcome back, everyone. Let us now welcome the next session of the day entitled Environmental, Social, and Governance, or ESG. Is it a cost center or is it a value driver? Moderating this session is someone who is known as the Green Man, Matthias Gelber, ESG Advisor, Philippine Stock Exchange, and Sustainability Director, ESI Consultant, Sri Abraham. Matthias is an international speaker, entrepreneur, author, and he has given talks in over 40 countries internationally. He has worked with many companies and internationally on the implementation of green technology, wider sustainability practices, and ESG strategies. Over to you, Matthias.
Thank you, Hasrul, for the nice introduction. And I hope today for Sikit Sikit Lama Lama Jadi Bukit. I'm here in the Philippines. I had some problems with my internet connection, but hopefully the bukit will be full so that I don't get disconnected and we can have a fruitful discussion on ESG. That's my hope. It's a super exciting topic. It's a boom topic. It's really happening big time. And when I think back about my days as a teenager, when my late father asked me, son, what job you want to get in the future? I told him, Dad, my job will be to save the planet. He said, what, son? That's not a proper job. You can't make money from hugging trees. Get a proper job like myself. Now, more and more, the market forces are there to help us make money from healing the planet, healing people, triple P, people, planet, profit. Some people even talk about quadruple P, purpose, planet, people, profit. It's all happening. The investors want to see it. They look at the risk of what happens if we don't take it into consideration and the opportunity side if we really follow the market trends. So ESG is trending. It is happening big time, but is it a cost center or a value driver? I obviously have my opinion on that, but let's let the experts speak. We have Jeevan Raju, the country head of Tata Consulting. He's a very familiar face in this scene. I watched the other day a decarbonisation discussion, and he was the man there. And then we have all the way from Singapore, Max Pura, the head of Asia Pac Tech Nation. So really, I'm looking forward to this discussion. And maybe Jeevan and Max, you can both introduce yourself and make your opening statement. What is your view on this headline? Is it a cost center or a value driver, ESG?
Max, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthias. Thank you, Jeevan. And good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to represent technicians. So my name is Max. I'm based in Singapore, managing technicians in Asia Pacific. Technician is the leading growth program for UK tech companies to grow and profit and scale in the right way across the UK, but across Asia Pacific now. My personal background and why ESG is one of the key things that I want to talk about. I was for the past 6 years the managing director of Winnow Solutions, which is a company that has put all its energy to look at one large problem that was food waste and how AI technology can help reduce this. And so I was managing for all of Asia Pacific. And one of the key things that we could see that were actually adding values for corporations to look at solutions in the ESG sector is to have a clear use of tech and clear use of understanding of a baseline and scientific data to be able to measure the impact of what was implemented. And so one of my view on this that I think there is a lot of buzz around ESG, and I've been working on this for a long time, and I just don't want it to become another buzzword, but as some things that it really measures, that is control, and is putting targets that we can control in the long term and see where the impact is. So we'll be interested to see how we can make sure it doesn't become a cost center, but really adding values to the company and to the planet.
Thanks, Max. Thanks, Max. My name is Jeevan Raju. I head TCS in Malaysia. I just want to give you a bit of background on who TCS is, Tata Consulting Services. Today, we are one of the largest IT service provider in the world. We have close to 500,000 people. We belong to the Tata Group of companies. And Tata Group of companies have been around for the last 150 years. And the ethos of it, to say that they are a sustainable company, it's to say the least. We've been around for 150 years with a pure intent of business, whereby the founders of the company really made it very clear from the get-go that the ethos of the company, it's about giving back to the community. The only reason we exist is only because of the community. Whatever we make, we give back to the community, and that's been the motto and ethos of the Tata Group. And TCS, over the last 50 years, we've grown significantly today in Malaysia, as well as also in the globe. We now have offices in different parts of the world. And in every engagement that we do, we in TCS, sustainability is ingrained in it. It is not something where we do it for the fun of it. We do it because it's a CSR. It's absolutely ingrained with the ethos. Everyone being recruited in TCS, we talk about the sense of purpose, we talk about the community, and we talk about profits. So that is very much ingrained in the DNA of the organization. And like I said, ESG is definitely something to stay for the long haul. You will see over the last 100 years, we've seen the industrial revolution coming, and we've lived through an industrial revolution. We've seen the digital revolution. Right now, we're probably living in it. And the next revolution will probably be a very sustainable revolution coming up, where our kids and our grandkids will be the forerunners for that. So we truly believe that ESG will be the Trojan horse for the next generation, the Trojan horse for the next pool of investments that the capital market is going to do. And we truly believe that the world is ready for something from a disruptor from a value creation perspective. So it's not a cost center, it's a value creator.
Great, excellent. And I can actually confirm that, Jeevan. I stayed in the Rebak Marina Resort in Langkawi like 10 years ago when it was under management of Tata. And I spoke with the GM and he told me, you know what? I told the chef to stop getting in the lamb chops from New Zealand because they're destroying my carbon footprint. And then he asked me at the end of my stay, have you got a couple of recommendations? And I told him, yeah, the aircon in the gym is too cold. A week later, I got an email from him, aircon in gym removed. I was like amazed. And I asked him, how come you can do the carbon footprint analysis? And he told me he was taught by Tata Corporate in the leadership program to do carbon footprint analysis. And this was 10 plus years ago. So amazing stuff. So let's drill down a little bit more in detail. Now, cost center or value driver, I would suggest it depends on how you implement it. It's a little bit like with legal compliance. If we only do it to satisfy the ESG ratings, maybe we will not get the value from it that can come from improving internal processes. If you increase energy efficiency, fuel efficiency, and you decrease your risk for a digital issue in terms of data security breach that can cost listed companies a lot of reputational money, then you're adding a lot of value to your organization. But if you're just implementing ESG blindly to get some extra scores, maybe then it's being perceived as a cost center. I would appreciate your comments on this perspective, Max, and from your own experience.
Yes, so from my experience is a little bit coming back to what I was mentioning before. One of the key is to really have a clear plans on how we want to implement this and how we're going to measure it to make sure that A, we're adding a value to the company and to the product and to any things that we sell, but B, also that it's set on science-based targets to reduce the emissions, and that is done with technology that are already existing or in working with innovations and innovation technology that can help solve this issue. So I believe that if we look at where is the way we can have the value, understand where we are at the beginning and implement technology or different recommendations that we can measure in the long terms, we will see where the value is. And if it happens that the value is not necessarily there, we can track and understand why, and maybe pivot or change the implementation in a long term, in a more efficient way. So we saw there was something that was published a few years ago and will be published every year called the Project Drawdown, that is actually looking at all the solutions that are already existing for us to implement into an impact. And I think that's one of the key things, is understanding what is already available, measuring it, and making sure that we review those findings and that they align with in the long term. I think we lost Matthias for this connection, so Jivan, do you want to add something to what I just
Sure,
said?
I'll do that. I'll do that. well, before Matthias comes in. So
Matthias is back.
There you go, Matthias.
I give a great answer.
Oh yeah, I missed it. What to do, La? Right? I mean, maybe you can feel good that at the moment the Malaysian and Singaporean internet connections are faster and more reliable than what I've got here in the Philippines. But normally it's okay, but I don't know what's happening today. Both of my internet connections, I actually have both. But what to do, La, as we say. So yeah. So Jeevan, did you give your answer already?
No, I was waiting for you to come in before I give my answer.
You guys should just continue, even if I'm not here, because it's mainly our audience out there that we are serving. I might be gone again any minute. I don't know. Unpredictable.
Sure. I think what we've done over the last couple of years in Malaysia, particularly about the projects that we do with our customers, we've taken a very cohesive view to that, and we've really said that we're not going to do a digital project for the sake of doing digital project. We want to start doing digital projects for the sake of what is it has got an impact to the world, to the climate, and to the people. And we started, and good enough, we started trying it out with one of the largest oil and gas company in Malaysia. And we said that, hey, can we now start reducing the carbon footprint by implementing a complete digital project? And we did that. We experimented. We never done before, a couple of 3 years ago. We've did it. We've reduced the carbon footprint significantly. And the net benefit right now to the organization, they are able to really reap phenomenal amount of benefits in terms of profitability, in terms of cost reduction, in terms of uptrend in revenue. And also the other one is transparency of how data has been used across the value chain. They now, for one, know how many vessels are out there are running around on a real-time basis, and how many vessels do they need to run the operations. Never before have they seen such things before. And based on that, we've taken this conversation further to vessel owners, oil vessel owners, and they say, like, we can start optimizing the consumption of energy that you use right now to provide services to your customers, being the oil companies. And they're intrigued by the fact that you can do that. And now we start, the moment you use digital and you couple it with some form of sustainability into there, you can start reaping phenomenal amount of revenue as well as value that what we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, I think the internal value creation on the decarbonization front is very straightforward, because we are talking about fuel and we're talking about energy. That is where your main carbon footprint is. Sometimes it's in your supply chain, but if we cut down on that.
Max, is that Matt?
Yeah, I think we lost Matthias again.
We lost him for a while. Well, let's go ahead, Max. So, So what else do you see from a cost center perspective? Do you see this very much a cost center initiative?
So
incentives.
Oh, Matthias is back.
Matthias is back. Sorry, now he's gone. So I don't see it as a cost center. Like I see that it can become one if it's not managed properly, and is not like looking at where the clear victories, the low hanging fruits, and then the implementation in the long terms, and it's integrated not only as a sustainable part of the company, but as a core value of the company. And I believe that as long as company and not taking that as one of the core things, and it's not something that is only the sustainability team that has to be responsible for, it's the responsibility is with the corporation, and everyone has to be able to argument why we're doing this and what are the objective and why is it positive, that have reflect the effects, and it doesn't become cost part of the business, but actually a profitable part. We see, like we studied in London and in the UK with most of the company we're working with the first net zero growth program for tech companies, and it's to create a conglomerate of some of the largest tech companies in the UK. That includes TransferWise now, Revolut, What3 were a few of those companies, to take a pledge and to work together and towards a few goals on how to be more efficient and not to look at the long terms towards the different goals that have been put at the COP or at the APC report that was published earlier this week. So we see also like it can become a cost when it's not only internally as a company, but looking at other people that are trying to do the same things and sharing the solutions and working together towards a common goal.
Yeah, I think this is very important in terms of the organizational aspect of making it happen, the involvement of employees.
Okay, did we lose him again? Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm probably going to echo what Matthias said. What we've seen in TCS over the last couple of years is the fact that the moment that this new, we've got 500,000 people globally, and with an average age of 28. And I'm on the other side of the spectrum. I'm really tipping it on the other side. But the more important thing is the millennials of the world are really seeing the fact that they want to have a sense of purpose in the organization, and what does the organization stand for in terms of sustainability and ESG, and whether they are really, are they greenwashing it, or are they really built that whole sense of purpose within the ethos of the company. And we've seen that very much with the youngsters, and we have a whole lot of youngsters in Malaysia. And we've, over the last couple of years, have worked on phenomenal programs in Malaysia. One for one is a Seed Lab, which talks about an incubation program for creating social enterprises to address youth unemployment in Malaysia. We're working on another program called TCS Sustainathon to reimagine the way education system should look like in Malaysia. So when you putting out programs of such nature, the young employees, the employees of today, are completely attracted by these. They realize that they have a 9-to-5 job, but they're more passionately driven by the fact that an organization has put their heart in their head as opposed to the head in the heart. And that has really been a huge significant change for organizations over the last couple of years. And we, for one, in TCS, we've made that very, very clear that we want to run an organization with purpose.
Yeah, I think the motivational boost that it can give people within the organization is actually underestimated and undervalued. I mean, who doesn't want to do good through their place of work? Yeah. And who really wants to do bad through their place of work? So being able to help the planet and help people through what we do is something that definitely motivates a lot of employees. So decarbonization, I think, is fairly clear-cut. But before we shift over, I want to briefly look at the social side as well. What would be your tips for starting the decarbonization journey, like Max and Jeevan, based on your experience, the first steps that people can do who haven't started yet within their organization on decarbonization?
We've advised, Max, I'll take this first, if you don't mind. We've advised companies over the last couple of years in Malaysia on the areas of decarbonization. One of it is have a very clear framework on decarbonization and how do you want to have a roadmap and where do you want to take your organization. In that particular framework, you should have 5 tenets to it. One is, what is the value case you want to create? What is the business advantage of decarbonizing yourself? And what is the cost advantage that you get out of it? Number two, what is the efficacy of it? Whether it's a nice to have or whether it's a must have. How do you leverage that, number two? Number three, you need to bring that whole idea of decarbonization as a culture in that particular organization. So you culturalize the fact that decarbonization is a way of life. It's not something a nice to do between 9 to 5. It's a way of life that you're going to be living and the organization is going to be living. Number four, communication. You need to communicate to all your stakeholders, whether it's within the organization or whether your external customers. The more important one, we spend little amount of time about what you do as an organization to your customers. Your customers will really love to know what are you doing for carbonization aspect of it. So the communication to customer is very, very important. And that builds trust with them. Number two, and the fifth one is build partnership. You cannot do it alone. It has to be done with a partnership, whether it's with your partner, whether with your customer, whether with your suppliers, whether with your other stakeholders. It needs a partnership ecosystem play. And that's where we truly believe that you need to have a very clear decarbonization roadmap built on these 5 tenets. And I think you will have you'll have half the battle done. Over to you, Max.
Thank you. Well, you covered a lot of points, and it's going to make my answer a little bit more difficult to not repeat what you said. But I would say if you really have to start at the beginning, there's nothing that is done. So first of all, there's no wrong way. If you're already taking the decisions that you want to look at it and start the decarbonizations, it means that you are in the right path. So the first thing I would do is you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There is already a lot of good things that are out there, what you can do. And there's a lot of company that's publishing this. And there's a lot of certifications and assessments that you can go through that will help you this. So for a small company is like what I did earlier. It was to go through the B Corp certifications and to do the assessments, because when you're an early stage company, it may be easier to go through this, and it will give you an idea of what can be done and a nonprofit that can support you on what to implement. And then also is to look and ask either your customers or your employees is what is a cause that matters to you? It's what would you do? What would you make in the company to make it better? And utilize what you already have in-house. To come back to your points earlier, people want to work for a company that's doing good, and they're going to stay longer if you show that you take this. So take advantage of this. And then once you have a map of what needs to be done, put the priorities and targets and integrate them into your KPIs or OKRs or whatever system you do to be able to have that, and go public with it. Make yourself accountable for what you want to do and get audited on it, everything. You don't want to become some things that's that, oh, I'm going to do that, we're going to do that because everyone does this. And then 2 years, 3 years later, it's completely been forgettable and is not there, and there's no way to track this. So that's what I would add to your answer.
Great. Thanks, Max and Jeevan. Jeevan, I just wanted to recap your 5 points. I think they're a great roadmap, but I missed the second point. The first one was the value case. Then the third one was culturalized, like really embedded within the organization. What was the second one again?
Efficacy.
Efficacy. Okay, good. Yeah, definitely. We need to be efficient, right? And have a very good implementation strategy to make it cost effective and deliver good returns. Then 4 and 5 was very much the communication part and the build partnerships.
Yes.
That's as well what I told one of my clients recently. Why don't you ask your customers how you can help them with their decarbonization strategy? If you then make a joint project or you introduce an innovation, you will have a much stronger relationship. And maybe you've lost customers. Maybe you used to be a supplier to Petronas. Now you've seen they have just committed to this decarbonization strategy.
Yes.
Give them a call. Hey, guys, we've got the solution for you to decarbonize this part of the business. We should talk. So, it can become a business development opportunity as well if you calibrate it in the right way and build, as Jeevan mentioned, those partnerships along those joint opportunities. So drive it with opportunity and value creation in mind, rather than just compliance cost center. We got to come up with a report. We got to score the points, really focus on the opportunities.
Exactly. And I truly believe that, Matthias, and we've seen that in Malaysia very well, that customers of ours are typically waiting for us to come and say, what can we do together? Something for the betterment of the world, something for the betterment of the country. Together, can we do something? Whether it's climate change, whether it's addressing youth unemployment, whether it's addressing the education system, what can we do together? And we never think that there is a need for a collaboration with our customer, because we always think the customer is one entity and we are the separate entity, and henceforth we have a vendor-client relationship. But in this new world where the pandemic has really taught us well that we all belong to one universal family. And they would probably also need some help about getting their roadmap out for decarbonization. And it's something that you might not even have all the solutions, but you're willing to take the journey as the pathfinder journey with your customer. And there you build the sense of trust and intimacy with them, and the sense of value that your organization belongs to.
Yeah, and if you have built up such a relationship, then you're not just a commodity service anymore that might get kicked out in the next round of purchasing department wanting to cut costs. Because if you understand what your customer needs and you deliver it, project relationships and ESG improvements, then you are creating
Matthias, I think you're getting choppy.
Yeah.
Max, over to you, Max.
I agree on the customers. I will take an example that we haven't talked about, like in my previous life, we were really servicing the hospitality industry, which is really much depending on their customers, because they are deciding which hotel they're going to stay in and whatever they do. And they did some survey that really saw that younger generation and older generation were putting more importance on which property was actually being more responsible towards ESG, and so we were able to build programs and build ways to be able to implement and to communicate that with the guest and the future guests coming to hotels, and putting that into global programs that with global targets on reducing food waste specifically. And that's we saw companies really engaging in this. Like IKEA was a great example that decided, is like, we're gonna go by 2025, we're gonna reduce all our food waste by 50%, because we have the capacity to see that it makes a financial gain for us. Our customers will have a better brand recognition on what we're doing. And we can really turn that into something positive by saying, how many meatballs is that? So using a we were really able to help, because that's what the customers wanted, and they could put their money where their mouth is, and put a real target on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. I think Jeevan touched on that earlier as well, the power of data. And I think one of the revolutions we will see in the ESG space is the effective introduction of a lot of digitalized technologies that will help us understand our performance. I recall the example, Jeevan, you mentioned earlier on. If you can see all the oil tankers moving around on a screen, and you can see their fuel consumption, then you're in control of the decarbonization aspect of that part of the business. Exactly. So I think we will see a lot of exciting innovations, and the tech nation startup companies, I'm sure a lot of them will be related to AI and data. So it's a super exciting space at this point in time. And I guess that can as well be relevant to a lot of the listeners out there, a lot of the young Malaysians. There's plenty of opportunity here for providing solutions to the problems that the big companies out there are trying to tackle. Yeah. And on a funny note, just as we were finishing off our decarbonization, my aircon auto shut off. Maybe it heard us talking about decarbonization. So I switched off my camera briefly because I didn't want to see you guys that I was wearing a Malaysian batik as well down there, the sarong, and this one up here. Otherwise, looking funny if I looked around with my sarong. But hope that it's okay lah. I'm still Malaysian, half at heart, even though I live in the Philippines now. So let's shift over briefly to the aspect of social in ESG. We tend to be quite familiar with the environmental issues because we've been working on them a lot. Is there any area in the social frame of ESG where you see we have a lot of opportunity to get returns if we get it right? I mean, we've always got the risk management aspect, and then we have the opportunity aspect. Are there any areas where you have seen really companies gaining benefits through effectively addressing the social aspects of ESG, like maybe employee wellness, maybe the data protection part, which is a little bit of a governance issue as well?
I can take let me share with you what we do in TCS. Over the last couple of years, we spend a lot of time about employee wellness and employee wholesomeness. I wouldn't say wellness, I would say wholesomeness, because we truly believe in a service industry like us, the employee is our true asset. And as well as we take care of them and we provide all form of support they require from an employee wellness perspective, our profits and our growth is truly dependent on how well they are and how happy they are. And we started to spend a lot of time about how well employees are in terms of their commute back home. In India, we have close to about 300,000. How do they commute back home? Do they have all the necessary things to commute back home? We started to take into account about how well is the home environment. Is like currently in the pandemic, do they have enough access? Do they have a proper internet access? Do they have a conducive environment at home for them to work? We started to look into mental health care. We wanted to make sure that all of our employees have a forum where they can come and express their apprehension, fears, anxiety that this whole pandemic has brought it upon them. So we spend a lot of time in that area so that the employee well-being is well taken care of. And we do that very consciously because in all of my town halls in Malaysia, the first question is, how are you and your family, and especially your kids? They are paramount to us. It's not about anything else. These people are paramount to us because if they are happy and they are well, the organization will fit in pretty well. So we've made a significant shift in terms of the dialogues that we have, even at the board level. We talk about profits, we talk about revenue growth, but we all spend equal amount of time about employee well-being. What more can we do for them? And at the board level, the conversation is, what more can we do for them? It's not about whether we've done enough. What more can we do for them? And I think that's a very pivotal question at a board level. If they keep constantly nudging, what more can you do for them? Then I think it opens up a huge dimension where an organization can accelerate. Max, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I see like a shift, not only because of the current situations that we have with the pandemic that really changed the way that we look at mental health and how we interact with our employees. We see what Bumble has done and other companies to give a whole week off to people to really look at the social aspect in the company and all the employees to make sure that they can be more look after and really being in a good state of mind to be able to make a change and to really grow and continue with other companies. So I think this is one part of like in-house and everything. But like what I saw through different companies that we work with, the tech that is developing is really to understand like what can we do for the community that where we worked with, like in the different countries? There's like, is there's a factory doing some agriculture, and one thing is like, how can we make sure that we can implement technology that will help the community to benefit from it in terms of microcredits? Do we see a big growth on over this? Like, how do we going to ensure that we give more access to this? I was talking to a company that is developing credit cards for domestic helpers to make sure that they have more independence and they have better controls and make sure that they have access to money and there's no issue, and regain trust with some people. Like, there is this aspect that I like, the social impact in the company, and we're going to treat our employee well. But what I see is a little bit more as a shift. Like, let's not forget where the community, where we produce, where we work, and how technology can help with this, and how we can also prioritize this and understand how we can give back to the people that do that. So this is the two aspects that I see: the social part, and it's employees in the community, and with our suppliers, if we can also demand from some of our suppliers to put certain standards in place, all the policies that you can require from your supplier, because there's one thing to implement policies in the company, but like, if the people that supplies you are not implementing the same kind of standards instead of social impact, it's kind of like not as efficient as it should be. So I think we're looking at those aspects.
Yeah, I think those are great examples. And Max, what you just shared sounds to me like, increasingly people are using the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a calibration to identify business opportunities, how we can combine a good business opportunity by serving the essential needs of people: poverty alleviation, access to education, looking after the local community, enabling financial growth, a lot of the underserved communities. So there's a lot going on there, and there's a lot of business opportunities there. I like as well the example that Jeevan gave. I'm sure, Jeevan, with that approach, you were better prepared for the pandemic. You were better prepared for the work from home effectively, because a lot of organizations were completely caught off guard because their employees have no decent internet connection, no decent workspace at home. And the quicker you can provide that, the more effectively your organization can operate despite difficult circumstances. So there's a lot of value that can be gained by doing all of this holistically. But Jeevan, I would like to ask you a big favor, because currently my wellness would greatly benefit if you could send me over a roti dosai with dal and sambal, because I haven't had that for 1.5 years. And I'm craving for it because I can't find it here in the Philippines. And that is one of the things that I really miss from Malaysia. The good old thick dal with a nice touch of sambal on top of it, unbeatable. So I need that for my personal wellness. But joking aside, even though, the food and Philippines, you have a lot of comorbidities that actually put people in hospital. And if we can do something about them through change of diet and lifestyle, we can gain great ESG benefits. Okay, let's switch over to the investors. Is ESG already mainstream for all the investors, for all the money people? Is it already a core priority?
I'll give it to Max. Max,
yeah,
go ahead.
I think so. I'll give some stats, because I think numbers will really talk. You were talking about the UN SDGs. We saw that the first half of the year in the UK, companies that have tackled one of the SDG have raised a total of $1.2 billion just in the first half of this year. So that's already a proof that yes, it's becoming a trend. Like, people are looking at this. With the climate tech is expected to grow in market value from 9 billion this year to 49 billion in 2027. So we see like a great growth rates of investment around almost 25% per year that is put out, and that's only for the UK. 21% of increase into the investments in climate tech and agriculture in 2020. All of those numbers are showing a trend. but also what we don't see is it kind of dictates that some of the VCs had to change the model, the way they invest, because these investments are longer term. Because we know this tech and this implementation are not going to be on a normal VC model that is a 3-5 years and exits and looking at this. So it could accelerate again because the VCs are changing a little bit the way to invest and the way they make them, because it's a long-term investment, and people are not necessarily looking for VC money and a quick exit and do that. So like they want to solve a problem, and that they need more time to be able to do that. So this is like a really number, but like it's something that is on every VCs that I meet almost. They're like, what do you have in net zero? What do you have in clean tech? What do you have in ESG? But it's not necessarily completely adapted on the investment strategy yet, I would say. There's still a little bit of work on this.
Yeah. We do a lot of work for a lot of large conglomerates in the world. And over the last couple of years, we've seen that the capital markets in Malaysia, being Bursa Malaysia, the stock exchange themselves, they have spent significant amount of time in creating what we call a sustainability framework, which is built on FTSE for Good. And what I believe in the next couple of years, you will going to see a whole new breed of investors coming to the capital market to invest on organizations and companies that really stands out in terms of from a sustainability index, from an ESG index perspective, and they will attract a new brand of investees coming in to pump in money, number one. Number two, you will also see potentially that the organizations which are heavily dependent on fossil fuel and all the other climate impact companies, you will see a slow decline of capital market, simply because if at all they don't reinvent themselves into renewable energy and new ways of working and new ways of producing energy, you will slowly see a decline in investors. Next 10 years from now, the investee profile of all these companies will definitely change. The profile of people wanting to put money where it matters will be the youngsters of today. And the youngsters of today will be probably looking at companies which are very much ESG driven as opposed to just purely profit driven. So I see that trend happening, and the foundation of it is being built, and the awareness of it has been built in a lot of these capital markets, and many stock exchanges are moving in that particular direction. What do you, Matthias?
Yeah, definitely. I can confirm that even in the Philippines, where I have a 1 day a week retainer with the Philippine Stock Exchange, there is as well a lot of move on more disclosure, looking at what are the criteria that we can use to move towards domestic ESG-driven indices and things like that. But what was interesting, I saw a comparison of Sustainalytics. They put Malaysia just behind Thailand on the second best management score for ESG in terms of companies. And I think that's a reflection of the proactive work that Bursa Malaysia has done in that context, with really driving things forward. And it's ultimately to the benefit of the Malaysian companies, because they'll be able to attract more ESG type investment funds because of the better scores that they are getting. Max, you mentioned three mega trends that the VC guys are currently focusing on. I could only understand two. One was net zero, obviously, because that's where all the money was flowing in. I think you were mentioning 40+ trillion, right? That's a gigantic figure. Then the ESG, but you mentioned the third mega trend that VC guys are looking for. Can you?
It's in general like to be linked to UN SDG. So to your earlier point before. So the color coding is helping a little bit, like, okay, which one we're going to invest in, and when they look at their portfolio, we need to have a split of this, even more in the social part, more on the net zero, more of this. The net zero is the one that is really much like on everyone's mind and mouth. And I think also there is very often a little bit of confusion on what is the difference? It's like sustainability, ESG, net zero is all the same thing for some investor, and there is still some work of education to be done. Like, well, it can be differentiated.
Yeah, but the net zero people classify as climate tech investment, right? Which includes building, logistics, even farming, forestry. There's a lot of innovation in the building sector to replace high carbon cement and steel with more biomass, bamboo or wood-based material. Then we have the whole food alternative proteins, right? The decarbonisation of the food sector, the what is it? Impossible Burger, very popular in Singapore. I think it's moved into Malaysia as well. I haven't yet seen it here, but I've seen Burger King offer now a alternative protein burger in the Philippines. So sikit-sikit lama-lama jadi bukit, it's starting to happen. And it's going to be but what are there any other mega trends that you see at the moment that we haven't mentioned yet that are in the early stages? Max and Jeevan, maybe some people that are listening want to start up a new company. They're asking themselves, where is the big opportunity now that is just starting to emerge?
One that comes to mind that we haven't mentioned yet is in the supply chains and on the traceability of product. So we're seeing more companies now that offering services that allows you to really track where your product coming from, what is the carbon footprint, and to really have a better understanding of what it is, from diamonds to foods to luxury wine, clothing, etc. So we see that changing to also like AI usage of satellites to be able to see what are the biggest movements in the shipping cards like that are used for your product, so you can predict better in communities movements and maybe like reducing the carbon footprint on this. So I see a lot of technology into the movements of supplies that is emerging more lately. And the other that I see is in well, all the building efficiency. I think it's a big thing. Like the smart cities is some things that we see a lot of new companies coming through this. And the last one is on the data storage, because the data centers and all the data that we have in the cloud, they're not really in the cloud, as we know, they're stored somewhere and they have a large carbon footprint. So we see a lot of technology to commons, like how we can optimize the storage of data and exchange of data to reduce carbon footprints. That's the one that just comes to mind right now. Given there's others, I'm sure that comes to mind to you too.
Yeah, I want to share a slight anecdote. I have two daughters, and they are fairly below the teenage age. And during one incident, we wanted to book a hotel and we wanted to go and help. So I told my daughters you go figure out which hotel we should book. But all I just told them, it should be an environmental friendly hotel. So they went and two young girls go about checking themselves out in the internet and saying which hotel. And they went to two of the largest value chain hotels, be it Hilton and Marriott. And they finally decided to go for another smaller chain of hotel. And I said, why did you choose this? And said, because they save the turtle in the ocean, and they recycle their water, and so we decided to go with them. So I'm saying a consumer pattern right now completely made a huge shift in terms of the way they purchase a particular service, and that's happening with the younger generation today. Now you will see right now statistics tells us 79% of consumer buyer will change their preferences based on sustainability and ESG. 79%. That's a huge number from a portfolio of customers. 36% of companies will also willing to change the way they purchase based on sustainability and ESG. So the shift is happening. The question is how much of that sale you're going to put your sail up and ride that wave, or are you going to wait and see and sort of completely miss the boat? So we see that happening in the consumer trend, consumer pattern. We see that happening in the B2B world too. And we believe this is only going to grow. This is probably just the beginning of the journey, and it's only going to grow. Over to you, Matthias.
Yeah. I think that's a great point as well. The consumer will have an influence, and the consumer will do some of the reality checks.
Exactly.
And the consumer will look at the detail. Once the consumer sees or smell greenwashing or social washing,
yeah,
they will back off.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good aspect. What Max mentioned, we have the data storage. I remember my good friend, Malaysian guy, Matthew Rajendra, he came up 6 or 7 years ago with this liquid-based data storage, where you save 80% of electricity. At the beginning, people were laughing, but after, by now, he's won a couple of awards, and he has started scaling it up into commercial products. So these things can really happen, and these things can even make Malaysians reach a level where they are suddenly seen as unique innovators in a space that is a global space. If you have a solution like that, it can move globally very fast. I read as well an interesting VC article, what VC guys were looking for. A lot of it was linked to waste and circular economy. I think that's where we have a huge opportunity in Malaysia. We have all the biomass.
Yes.
You know, think about the palm tree trunks. They're just being mulched and being, you know, the carbon that was absorbed maybe goes up in the air again. But can we turn that into furniture? Can we turn that into building materials? So the huge biomass that we have in Malaysia is maybe a big opportunity that we can look at. So there are plenty of opportunities for our listeners out there, whether you're an established person, business person, or a younger person. The time for startups in this space has never been better. So I think that is one of the conclusions that we can draw here. And one of the questions that we as well wanted to ask was, how can the investors, when they've put money into companies that have, you know, a good ranking from an ESG perspective, how can they keep tab on the disclosures and make sure that the companies stay true to those ESG commitments?
Max, you want to take it up?
I'm not as familiar with this, so just this was like, but from my point of view, so what I saw from the investors, they put that into targets on every year. So they integrate into the KPIs, and certain KPIs are linked to ESG records and reporting that has to be provided. And so basically what was promised, and there's an assumption of how it's going to grow, and it has to be part of the core value and part of the investments and part of the reportings that has to be done. So it's in line with the targets, you have to deliver this, and you have to be audited on this. So for example, you were mentioning waste. If they decide like they want to reduce their waste across the offices in the world or something by 20%, it has to be able to be audited. So I think it's really to be accountable for what we say we're going to do, and to put targets that can be reviewed in a longer terms and attached to a further investment. So from a previous company, we had an investment that was linked to performances in terms of reductions of CO2e across our clients.
We in Malaysia, we're spending some amount of time with the banking regulators about how they start tracking ESG reporting by a lot of the banking institution in Malaysia, number one. Number two, we've also talking to a lot of the large banks about how they start providing portfolio understanding of their loan takers as well as loan givers, number one. Number two, we've also built a platform whereby companies or the banks will be able to, in future, know how much has an organization committed to ESG and how much have they lived up to it based on public domain data, which is currently much more available right now. And it curates, it sniffs through the entire internet and picks up this particular data, tabulates it, and puts it into an ESG score for the banks. So the future, every time the individual, the organization wants to loan money from the bank, the bank has a complete ESG portfolio of that organization. And that's happening right now as we speak. We see that's going to be slowly trickling down to the SMEs and also to larger widespread micro organizations, whereby the banks are going to be very conscious about the loans and funding they give for companies that comply to ESG and companies that really whitewash or rather greenwash ESGs. And that data, which is very much prevalent today, is something that we are curating as a platform, and we're providing this to the regulators and also to the banking institution right now. So if you ask me if it's going to happen, it's already happening. If you ask me whether the organizations need to really adhere and really take a conscious program towards meeting the ESG goals that they have set out, they should do that, because everyone is going to be, it's going to be a transparent house that we all are going to live in. And that transparency will bring a lot of accountability from an investor perspective, from a stakeholder perspective, and from a citizen perspective.
Yeah, I think those are great points. And Jeevan, what you just mentioned, the data availability on, in the future, we will put in the name of a company, and we will get a complete rundown of what they are up to. At the moment, this is already available, but you have to buy it, or you need to have your own team collating that data. But the data providers or the rating agencies, they're not just relying on the information they get from companies. They are looking at contextual data, social media stuff, newspaper articles, anything. It's not just what the company tells them, even what Max mentioned earlier on, the satellites, the GIS data, a lot of movement of vehicles or situations of forests or plantations will all in the future be captured by visual data. So there's a lot going on there that can then prove whether the statements are right or wrong. We had two questions that came in from the audience. One, I will just take very quickly. What is the uptake of ESG in Malaysia? I think it's quite good. As what Jeevan earlier mentioned, Bursa was very proactive. Maybe it started off as a compliance initiative, but Khazanah as well has been driven ESG and sustainability at an early stage. I remember when I was still living in Malaysia, there was even the sustainability exhibition of Khazanah companies. So Malaysia has been one of the most proactive companies in the region in picking it up. The second question that came in, maybe I want to address it to Jeevan first, and then Max can have a go at it as well. What happens if vendors or suppliers refuse to supply certification like the ISCC, this supply chain carbon certification? We are not able to ban them, as they say they can export elsewhere without needing such certificates. What are our thoughts on that?
Okay, I personally think you might be able to get away with it today, but you might not be able to get away with it tomorrow. Organizations like us in TCS, we are really looking into our own supply chain, and we're also emphasizing to our suppliers for them to be compliant to ESGs as well as the sustainability, UN sustainability codes. And what we've also spending a lot of time is also making sure that they adhere to that. One is on a self-declaration format. One is through our own, checking of the internet and stuff like that. So you will have a situation where you will be able to get away with it today, but that will not probably be a lasting solution moving forward. So we see a lot of transparency coming. A lot of organization is going to start making that an accountable submission that you need to do as an organization. And eventually it'll sort of come up to you. So it's myself, you address it right now, make that shift right now, and make that investment right now.
Great. Any views on that, Max?
So I would say also we always have the choice to look at different suppliers, and it's a drastic solution, but like when you really have a commitment on your side, it's like this is what we need to do, and this is what we need to achieve, and this is the direction that we're doing, and we put it into our values. That this is what we want to achieve as a company. We need to be able to say, like, if you cannot comply to this, it goes against what we want to build, so we will have to look elsewhere. And it's a fair assessment. So like this is the core of our business. So I think that's one way to address there's problem. After if it's a very specific product, I understand that it doesn't work necessarily all the time, but it's coming back to like, if you make these commitments, there is some investments that have to do early stage. Maybe you will have to pay a little bit more for time, but to come back to what you just said, Jivan, in the long term, they will pay off because it's going to be inevitable, like that is going to come to this. So I agree with what you say. And yeah, if you have to look somewhere else, unfortunately, that's what you can do.
Thanks for agreeing with me, Max.
So good. So guys, the crystal ball of where ESG is going in the next 5 to 10 years, what is your future prediction in 30 seconds, Jeevan?
I think it's going to be a way of life. Today, we see digital so integrated part of our life today, digital. Everything we do in apps, everything, 20 years ago, we didn't know much about digital. But digital is so part of our life today, given the fact that we carry a handphone. Sustainability in ESG will be equivalent or even more part of our life as we move forward in the next 5 to 10 years. There will be a new brand of services. There'll be a new brand of organizations coming to provide that as a service. And you're going to see a shift in consumer buying habits, people living habits, as well as people being very conscious about the universe and Mother Earth. That trend is already happening, and it's just going to accelerate more with this pandemic.
Max?
I think it's not going to be a trend anymore. That's what it's going to be. It's just a part of our life, and it's something that we're not going to question. So we can see the younger generation that is to be to excuse my French, but like pissed off, and they don't want to take this anymore. And everything that is created is in line with what we're going to make this change. We have to make this change. So in the next 5 to 10 years, I think it's going to become something normal and day to day, and it's going to be considered from day one. So like, how are we going to do business? How are we going to do business for good? And we're doing the business the right way. We're still going to be profitable. We're still going to look at the capitalism model. That's not an issue, but we're going to do it right because we want to do it in a way that becomes normal, like and not a trend anymore, and just some things that is part of our life and is and we don't have a choice. So there is this line of 1.5 degrees that is coming quickly, and I think we just don't have a choice. We need to address it because otherwise, I don't know how many conversations we'll have on Zoom.
So basically, in conclusion, ESG is big. It will become even bigger. It will become the new normal in the future. And I think we had a great session. I learned a lot. I hope everybody out there is inspired that there are loads of opportunities with ESG. Sorry for my internet connection, but at the end, the book, it happened. And my personal recommendation for all of you, especially the male who want to start the decarbonisation story, go Botak. Save time, save shampoo, save water, save electricity. Sikit, lama, jadi bukit. See you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, Matthias. Excellent.
Thank you, Jeevan. Thank you, Matthias.
Thank you.
Yes, Max and Jeevan and Hasrul. Excellent session. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Matthias, and also the great panel for this discussion on this trending topic over the past year. Going green is good for business in the future. We need that urgency to save our one and only planet Earth, give back, but still be sustainably profitable if aligned with the company's values. Purpose, planet, people, profit. All right. Thank you again, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now be moving to the final session of the day. So do click join session and complete the survey for each of the sessions for us to serve you better. See you in a bit.